Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have the pleasure of Sarah Ayton. Good morning to you, Sarah.
Morning, how you doing?
I'm very well. Good to see you. You are a sailor and you've won 2 gold medals at 2 Olympics, firstly in Athens 2004 and then in Beijing 2008. And now you're a performance coach, personal trainer and a keynote speaker. And we're going to be exploring your experience of that sort of career, look at aspects of the front of the boat as an apprentice through to being a leader at the back of the boats, and see how that sort of creativity and transitions happen within your sailing career, and we can apply that to the leadership context for those people listening right now. But just before we go there, Sarah, I'd like to ask you, what do you love about what you do or what you did?
Well, that's what do I love about what I do, what I did? I guess firstly, sailing is like has been my passion and the thing I fell in love with from the age of 6, and still to this day, like I've just stepped back into to some kind of high-end racing again, and I just love the complexity of it. It's like sailing is such a dynamic sport. You've got to make the boat go fast. You've got a bit of teamwork, and then there's this whole element of competition and the whole tactical and strategy element. So for me, from a young age, that sense of adventure and freedom, it's like that place where you just know you can just be yourself. And then as I grew up, it was that more racing, winning, and the campaign management type of stuff. And I guess now what I love about kind of what I do is I can use all of that knowledge and experience that I've gained over those 20 years ago in August since I won that first gold in Athens. So I can use all that experience of high performance sport to help people be the best version of of themselves. And for me, that's really rewarding.
That's great, and we want to tap into that experience for today's conversation, because all what you learnt there, what you're doing now, is equally relevant whether you're sailing a boat or whether you're trying to manage a team within an organisation. There's lots of similarities there that we can use. But I want to really almost start at the beginning really of almost your journey of getting sailing, why sailing, and then that sort of when you got to that place of going to Athens. I mean, that's a huge thing to go to an Olympic Games, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really fortunate because my parents wanted my brother and I to have a hobby, and we're quite unique in the fact that my parents do not sail. Like my mum can't swim, and my dad kind of has no interest in boats. But they were keen for us to have a hobby, so we discovered sailing. And kind of growing up just outside London, we discovered a reservoir there called Queen Mary Reservoir. In actual fact, we just lived like a 3-minute cycle ride from the sailing club. So went up there and saw this thing called sailing going on. And from a young age, we just my older brother, he started first, and then I followed in his footsteps at around about the age of 6. And as I mentioned, it's just that it was that sense of freedom. And now, as a nagging parent, I think it was that place to escape from nagging parents that I really enjoyed. And then as I grew up, I found out that actually sailing was an Olympic sport. And we've got the Olympics just coming up, haven't we, next month? And for me, it was watching the Olympics on the TV, the Barcelona Games, watching Sally Gunner win that gold, age 12, thinking to myself, wow, she is incredible. What must that feel like to be an Olympic champion? So that drive to kind of be the best and to one day maybe get to the Olympics, or that dream really became, I guess, that driving force for me to turn it into reality.
So
So
you
yeah,
actually got inspired by watching the Olympics and thought, I can have a go at this. Is that generally how you felt at that time?
yeah, I just I remember lying on the floor in my parents' lounge, like this, watching, grossed in the TV at the Olympics, and then, watching that race and just thought, wow, that is incredible. What does it feel like? Goose pimples on my arms, just like Olympic champion. One day, wouldn't that be cool to achieve that? So genuinely, that was when I kind of had that dream to be an Olympic champion. And just thankfully, sailing was an Olympic sport. So those two matched up quite well. And then, of course, that journey is, we're really lucky. I think my timing was quite good in the fact that lottery funding just came in 96. So the time I was 16, I was sort of in development squad, like Olympic potential. So then just followed that pathway up until the age of 18, where I was sailing a single-handed boat then, and reached the very top of youth sailing, and then decided it was sort of time to transition into Olympic sailing. But that was a tricky moment, right? That transition from youth to senior. That is kind of like when you're going from college, university into the workplace. All of a sudden you are in an environment where everybody has got much more experience than you. They know the ropes much better than you, and it's that whole professionalism and actually understanding what it takes to be the best. So I really struggled in that time, but thankfully
How
I
did you deal with that? Because
was asked.
obviously it's like anything. If you're, I don't know, the top of your game in an environment, and then suddenly you put into another environment where actually other people are better than you or got more experience. How did you handle that? As you say, it was quite tough, that transition, but how did you walk through that? Because there's people listening right now that might be really good at their job, and then suddenly they get a promotion or they go into another company, and there's other people that are either similar or better, not in that competition in that sense, but also got more experience, and that can be quite unnerving, can't it?
Yeah, and I think you're right. These transitions happen, they happen for me throughout my career, and they are real key moments. And kind of for me, it's all about there just taking that time to pause and actually this whole creative piece. So first of all, for me, it's about who's in your team. So when it is a tough moment like that, for me, at the age of 18, I remember having the conversation with my parents and my brother. I was kind of done. I'm like, how am I ever going to get from finishing like third page on the results to being, Olympic potential in this fleet? And thankfully, through their conversation support, I was able just to kind of like step back and think creatively about, well, what could I do? So for me, it's about building your team. Like, who are the people that you can speak to when it's tough, like, and that you trust. And then there's this whole creative piece. So, what can I do differently? What are my options? How can I get from where I am now to where I need to be in 4 years' time? um and that was a key moment, and actually thanks to my dad there, he's like, well, why can't you just go and train with the best sailor in the country right now? And so that's what I did. I took myself to Hayling Island, which is on the south coast, which was where the representative for the 2000 Sydney Olympics was training, and just went and placed myself there to create that opportunity. And before long, she asked me then to join in that training program, and ultimately then asked me to join the team for 2004, which is where I won that first gold. So, I think when we are in those transition phase, it is building a team. It's about thinking creatively. And, it's very much about being patient, isn't it? It's the long game. It's
Mm.
not, we can't be experts at something next week, but actually, if we break it down, it's a 4-year program. What are my goals year by year, month by month, week by week?
And obviously, putting yourself in that position from that creative solution, you're still putting yourself in a place of, I suppose, being uncomfortable, aren't you? Because you're putting yourself in a place of growth, and that means slightly uncomfortable, slightly stretching you, trying to be a better version. How did you deal with that? Because those feelings come and go and can almost stop you doing things, can't they? Whether you want to do public speaking or lead a team, and you feel that uncomfortableness. How did you deal with those sort of moments?
Yeah, it's that stretch zone. And, even now, like I'm in it in my sport, because I've just kind of gone back after like 10 years, really off the water, not racing, back into, racing situation, doing tactics in a really competitive fleet, professional fleet. So like the pressure's on and very much in that stretch phase again. But for me, it's then all about kind of coming back to your super strengths. What am I good at, and making those my real super strengths, and then using the team for the areas that maybe I'm not so strong at or need some work. because that's the beauty of a team, right? Somebody is going to have the super strength that you haven't got. So identifying who those people are and making sure that you've got a communication loop that gets the best from them and kind of enables you to fill in those gaps. So I think, that's really important. And then I think for me also, it just comes down to that sense of, when you're in that zone, it's understanding what makes you tick. And for me, it's all this sense about being proud of myself and not letting myself down. So, in this phase, yes, it's going to be tough, and some days are going to be great. And in my instance, some tactical calls are going to be brilliant, and I'm going to get some wrong. But actually, as long as I'm 100% engaged and I'm committed, and I'm getting all the information and I'm drawing in the information from my teammates, then you can't do more than that. And then, of course, it's about the review, isn't it? Well, how am I going to actually move forward from where I am? So for me, I love the stretch phase. I love the pressure, but it is being grounded and really kind of true to understanding yourself so that you don't just fail and crack under pressure.
No, and I think that's important. And you talk about the review phase, and I think that's a phase which I don't think a lot of us do well enough. We go through challenges or tough things and tough moments, or we're pushing ourselves or trying to create a better version, and we feel uncomfortable. But actually, it's that review phase where we actually reflect, don't we, and think, what did I learn? What can I do differently? And I think is that a sort of thing, a practice that has become almost second nature to you now, or was that something you have to really work hard to do?
Yeah, well, I think our sport really teaches that, because after every race, we'll have 3 or 4 races a day. The races last 40 to an hour. So, you get then 5 minutes to review that race. So we become very good at debriefing within the moment, like first hand. And that's really good to pinpoint, the one thing in that race that actually, made it or broke or kind of or was the root problem cause of the problem. And then, of course, there's that daily debrief, in terms of how was the day, do we need to change anything for tomorrow? And then, we then have like a monthly review. So we become pretty good at reviewing performance in the moment, kind of event management, because the event's over 5 days. And then that monthly and quarterly review. And for me, winning ultimately is a bit boring. Like, the winning days, great, yeah, we've won, and that's awesome. But it's the days that we make the mistakes. They're the days that actually, although they feel terrible, and sometimes, it can feel like the world is ending. They're the ones that actually you pick apart those mistakes, and you can really identify a way to move forward. So we really embrace mistakes, embrace those bad days, and really pick out those learning points.
And obviously, there's a lot of emotions, and particularly if something goes wrong, as in you don't win, certainly if it's a significant event. And so, how have you, as a team or an individual, as sort of helped to sort of manage those emotions or deal with those emotions? What have you got an example where you lost the race and it was quite significant, and I don't know, perhaps you didn't handle the emotions out at the time, but reflected on that, and I don't know, what would you do differently?
Yeah, well, we had a World Championships which was the qualification for our Olympics, the first stage of the qualifications, and we had to finish in the top three for funding and to meet the first bit of criteria. And we came down to the final race, and actually on the water, we had done what we needed to do, and we were in second place overall. Until we were in our apartment, and our coach comes rushing in and says, "Sarah, girls, you're in a protest." So we're like, protests, and it was at the sort of one of the marks around the course. There was an incident, and apparently we didn't give enough room to the American boat. So we went into the protest. We lost the protest, which meant we were disqualified from the race, and it meant we finished fourth overall, which meant we didn't meet criteria for selection, and we didn't take a jump up in our funding. So it was a complete and utter disaster for us. And I remember saying to my coach, again, I think I'm not good enough. A bit of self-doubt creeps in. But then again, it's this whole phase about stepping back. What can we learn? And at that one moment, we realized that actually when the pressure is on, we weren't great at dealing with the pressure. That kind of red mist came over. We weren't thinking clearly. We weren't seeing the bigger picture. We were making rash decisions. We were desperate to win. And I think for us, the biggest learning there was about, this mindset about actually being patient when you're in those situations, making sure you have those processes, routines, making sure the loop of communication is there, and you're having a clear picture, and you're not in a rush to win.
That's interesting. Not in a rush to win. It's always very hard when you're in that moment, isn't it? When those emotions are flying, and obviously you're reflecting now. When you reflect back on your moments of when it was difficult, whether it's setbacks or challenges that you didn't win a race or something went wrong or whatever reason happened, what would you tell yourself now from your experience of having gone through everything and what you've achieved? What would be your advice to yourself, sort of whatever, 20 odd years ago?
Yeah, well, I guess from actually the biggest thing I've learned, and I really hang my hat on, is just this whole sense of being solution focused. I mean, and the positivity. And I think, and I tell my kids this, if you have a bad match, or it's this whole sense of, what can you learn from it, and actually put it into perspective. What's the bigger picture? And actually, making sure you spend the time to think what you would do differently next. But for me, it's all about that being solution focused, and moving on. And I think that would be, although it feels at the time like your whole world is ending, actually there's always something to learn. And actually it's about not giving up. It's about being resilient, pushing forward, opening up yourself to areas of improvement, going back into that stretch phase, getting the support that you need, asking your team, looking for expert advice, doing all those things that actually mean that you won't be in that situation again. And for us, in what I was talking about, we then practiced being in those high pressured situations. And we practiced our tempo, our communication. We practiced, not focusing on the end result, but actually just focusing on those process and routines. So I think that one moment really made us, for our future sailing.
Fantastic. And they always say it's the sort of failures, or and almost reframe failure as feedback, isn't it? It's those moments is where you learn the most, as you say. When you win, you just, yeah, it's celebration. It's important to win, clearly, but actually it's the moments when you fail or it doesn't go quite right is where you actually learn the most, if you pause and reflect. And that's the key thing here, isn't it? It's the stopping, the debriefing, the reviewing, rather than just racing on and go, oh, I didn't win and that's terrible, off you go. Actually, it's the pausing bit, isn't it?
Yeah, and also like even at the weekend when I was racing, I made one bad mistake at the end, like at the upwind, sort of final leg of the course. I made one bad mistake, which meant we ended up joint first, and we needed 1 point. And because of my mistake, we would have won. And I think the important thing to say is, yes, you can be angry with yourself. And it's not angry with everybody else. It's like angry with yourself for the mistake. And I think, it's Wednesday now, right? This happened on Sunday. Today, I feel just about okay about the mistake. Of course, it's fine to grieve, isn't it? And to be cross with yourself. Ultimately, I made a mistake. But it's about, okay, so what would I do differently next time? And so for me, I have like 3 actions that I would do differently next time. What are the facts? What did I miss? And actually, I just went against one of the key kind of critical facts in decision making in this final approach to the mark. Next time, do the basics well, and actually, the result would have been okay.
And how do you deal with that in a team context? Because obviously you're working as a team, aren't you, as within this sort of racing, and other people let you down or make mistakes. How does that play out? Because obviously we work in organizations and people make mistakes and people get cross and angry and don't always handle it very well while other people make mistakes. How did you deal with that when your other teammate, not say let you down, but did a mistake that cost you a race by that, like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all super, really trying to stay in that really logical frame of mind. Um, you know, in our team, we're all there for the same reason. We wanna win gold. We've got our values, we've got our vision. We back each other 100%. So, we're very logical, and mistakes happen, but how do you recover from the mistake? I think that's for us is the most important thing. And how do you reset really quickly? So a mistake happens. How do you then re-engage that person? How do you reassure that you're getting the best out of that person and their confidence isn't knocked? So for me, it's that re-engagement piece, and actually, not brushing the mistake under the carpet, kind of understanding what happened. Is there a lack of support, or is there a lack of skill set? Where do we need to build upon so that the mistake doesn't happen again? But then very much like re-engaging with that individual and teammate to kind of reinstall the confidence. That for me is a really great strength of a leader, and to kind of really just build that person up, rather than, as we will sometimes do, point the finger, say it's your fault. We didn't really have that. Mistakes happen, but we would never point the finger, and there wouldn't be a blame culture. It would be, what do we need to do now to get this, to get our teammate back on track.
That's fantastic. That's really good, a good approach. And obviously, we're in the middle of the Euros at the moment, and we all get the challenge of England and everything else. And when things don't go quite right, I would love to be a fly on the wall in the sort of half time. And what is Gareth Southgate talking to his team? What do you think he's saying? What would you be saying to them in terms of, I don't know, helping people to lift their gaze and get a bit more motivated and think differently? What sort of things do you think goes on in those sort of rooms?
Yeah, I think it's all about tempo, isn't it? And I love watching the football, but I'm not an expert of football at all. But even in our sport, it's like, it's just getting that tempo back and making sure everybody's on top of their own game, being the best they can be, and making sure that energy is there, the teamwork is there, the processes, the routines, those simple things are being done well. And I think actually, if you break the football down, it is still, isn't it, the simple things being done well. And those processes are there, the routines are there, and they're executing their best performance. And so I'm sure it's just that, a bit of that building the confidence of their team up, not destroying them and saying them they're utterly useless before half time. But it is that, isn't it? It's just about or clarifying, all those basic things. And it's energy, isn't it? And being in the now and not worrying about the end result. I think that's a big one. As I learned from my experience of the World Championships, it's letting that end result going. And actually, if you just do your basics well, the end result will take care of itself.
Yeah, and in fact, you're not in control of the end result anyway. All you're in control of is the moment now, isn't it? The process that you're working through, which I think
Yeah,
people
exactly.
often
The
forget,
whole,
don't they?
yeah, controlling the controllables. And sailing is a great one for that, because you've got so many variables happening. But actually, what can you control? And I think that's a really good a good one, isn't it? Controlling the controllables. And you can't control how your competitors are going to react, but you can just make sure you're doing the best you can do as a team.
Yeah. So talk us through how different was your lead up to Athens versus your lead up to Beijing. Bear in mind you'd already got a gold leading up to Beijing. Was there a difference in terms of your mindset, your confidence, or was the expectations higher in the sense of what you could achieve and therefore put more pressure on? It'd be interesting to understand that.
Yeah, well, so Athens, we weren't going in as favourites, and actually in the build up to Athens, we hadn't really won any major events. But we really drew on kind of our Helmet experience, because she'd already won a gold in Sydney. So she knew it was all about the end event of the Olympic Games. And the Olympics can do some funny things to people, kind of that pressure, doing things that they'd never normally do. But because it's the Olympic Games, you feel like you need to do something different. And for me, the build up to Athens was just a real life lesson on, like, intensity in which you train all of the time. So from the build up to Athens, I know we spent, well, many more hours than our competitors did on the water, trying to make the boat go faster, and kind of building on our racing and strategy. So we were experts, I'd say, when we got to Athens at sailing the boat. We knew the boat better than anybody else. Um, and and then I think with the experience of the Olympic Games, that it's just like any other event, really kind of pulled us through. Um, and Athens was a special event for us because we'd won that event, with a race to spare, which is completely was nuts, because while everybody else, because we get a discard, you can drop your worst result. So while everybody else was going out to compete against their silver and bronze, we just kind of went to the spa and got our hair and nails done, and we're looking glamorous on the podium. So that was a bit crazy. But as I say, the lesson there was all about every day the same, so that when you arrive to the games, you're not looking to do anything differently. Actually, you're just going out there and do what you always do. And then Beijing, we very much, that's when I moved to the back of the boat. We took quite a different approach to the games. In fact, we wanted to arrive unbeaten, and we wanted to go into our final race, which was now the top 10 into a double scoring race. We wanted to go into that race not being able to lose a medal. So there was a different sense of intensity. And I guess with that brings maybe a little bit more pressure, because you're going in as favourites. But with that, also it means that people don't know how to beat you. So that was a nice place to be. We were double world champions, European champions. We were ranked number one in the world. So we had that sort of pecking order, which was nice. But again, it's still about going into that event just doing what you always do. And I suppose they're the two common themes. When you're at a big event, when the pressure is on, it's about being best prepared. And whatever that may look like. In Athens, it was about being the fastest boat on the water. In Beijing, it was about being the best racers. So two quite different overall sort of visions of each campaign, two different approaches, but both actually delivered the same result. So yeah, the games, both journeys were different, both approaches were different, but that intensity and that sort of drive over the 4 years to arrive at the Olympics best prepared, that attention to detail, leaving absolutely no stone unturned. I think those two things were very similar. So no matter where we'd finished at each games, I think you could say that as a team that we did absolutely everything we could do.
And how did you manage, especially at Beijing, that whole possible confidence? You just won a load of races beforehand. You were already a gold medalist, and not that confidence that can be almost get in the way and create complacency, or not arrogance in a sense, but potentially dip into that. Oh, we can do this. We're already world champions, and we've already got a gold medal. How did you manage that? Not sort of mess with your head or your performance.
I don't know. I think there's just this drive, like that's the goal, is to win gold at the games. And yes, we're world champions. Yes, we're unbeaten. But the whole purpose of this campaign is to win gold in Beijing. So for us, those little steps, you can almost park the first goal. That's done. I think it's like the steps of the winning the worlds, the Europeans. All of that is just building momentum to the final event. And every time we'd won an event, it was just about, let's debrief, what could we have done better. How was the communication, how was the tempo in the boat, how was the decision making. So even though winning, still kind of like trying to push the game forward, so that we arrive at the Olympics in that position where it's not possible to lose a medal. And we ended up being in that we couldn't come worse than silver in Beijing. So I think it's that thing, we really kind of raised the bar. Our mission was world domination, which is a little bit punchy, isn't it? But that's what we were heading for. We wanted to win everything. And, that the power of that mission, the teamwork, and I think really meant that, there was no room to get distracted. There was no room for self-doubt. There was no room for any egos. We were there to do a job.
Fantastic. And just one final question. What the mindset you've learnt and gained through being an Olympic champion, How does that translate into world of organizations and leadership that you're involved in now?
Well, I think, well, sort of the leadership piece, I think for me, when I transitioned, I had no idea how to be a leader. And I think the biggest thing I learned was it's really important to be yourself and to lead how you want to lead, and to understand people and to be empathetic and understanding. And I think the power of the vision and mission, values. I think for me, they're kind of the fundamentals. But ultimately, allowing individuals and yourself to be yourself. I think that's really important. And I think the other area is just this whole creativity, solution focused. Not wasting time thinking about things that we haven't done or that we're not good at, but actually, what are the things we're good at, and what are the things, what help do we need to be better?
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your time, Sarah. Really helpful insights there on how to obviously be Olympic champion, but also how to lead an organization, because there's lots of similarities with that. If people want to connect with you and get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, just by my email or my LinkedIn. So yeah, my email, Sarah Ayton, OBE.com, my website, and email Sarah at sarahaytonobe.com.
Excellent. Thank you for your time, Sarah, today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Cheers.